talking earlier, we had some very, very good foundational education that we were a part of in Detroit. I think our school, when we started, was an integrated school, and then we looked up and, all the other people were gone.
Yes, yes.
And we were there. But Dr. Stewart, why don't you give us a little background on yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the question and answer period.
Well, very good. I appreciate it. Again, to have the opportunity, my friend, to be on your program and to share some ideas with you. And as you were mentioning about growing up in the neighborhood where we grew up on the west side of Detroit, at a time that the city was just kind of booming.
Right.
Booming with commerce, the auto industry. Many children from the boomer generation, which were everywhere, neighborhoods were packed out with children.
Right.
And when you had a different kind of experience of real community, with teachers and neighbors and block clubs and all these different things where we grew up together in a real wholesome community, which really, in my estimation, as I think back on it, was really the definition of a village.
Right.
Where your parents, you grew up with your parents or single parent families or whatever it was still a community where everybody gathered, and there was a sense of responsibility that neighbors had for the children of the community. I remember the factory up there off of Epworth and where when the fathers, many of them who worked in the factories, got off of work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and walked home, the noise level of the community went down.
Right.
When they got off work. I mean, there's all these different things and these different cues that help you to understand that you were part of something much larger than yourself. And it wasn't uncommon for neighbors to correct you.
That's right.
And in one particular case, I had a neighbor down the street that actually walked me home by the collar. So that wasn't. Those experiences were, unusual in terms of people providing correction, and so it was a great time growing up. A sense of community and just a beautiful city, and good people, great people. I'm thankful. Coaches, all kinds of folks who were there, who gave interest in your development and took a personal interest in helping you to do what was right and to grow up to be something, a person of worth and value. And so I appreciate those days.
I do
refer to them quite often as we, talk about community and future and those kinds of things. So I'm thankful. It's a great time, great time.
And you happen to come out of that community. I mean, we could talk for days and days about all of the famous people that were a part of that neighborhood, from Rosa Parks to Congressman Conyers and the Temptations, the Motown. I mean, we went to school right down the street from Motown.
Right.
All of that. I mean, the basketball players and the baseball players were part of the community. We saw them.
Yes.
It was nothing to go and see David Ruffin or Jimmy Ruffin or Marvin Gaye out on the block.
Yes.
Lucky Strike. You saw people like that. People don't believe that when I tell some people that that was a part of my upbringing. I actually worked right across the desk, the room from Miss Parks when we both worked at Conyers.
Yeah.
But I tell people, in that time, we were so segregated in Detroit that we all had to live together. It was not a choice that we had. We only had one community. If you were middle class or even above middle class, there was only one neighborhood you could live in Detroit. But you went quite a bit further. You went on to go to college at, I believe, at Wilberforce, and then you got your master's, and I think you have a double doctorate. Is that correct?
You have a doctor of ministry and a doctor of philosophy, a PhD and a doctor of ministry,
You also had the opportunity of fellowshipping at Harvard. Is it Harvard or Yale?
Yeah, Harvard. Spent some time up there and, studied overseas and got to the point where I matured more as a student and began to take these studies more seriously and that kind of thing. So it was an enriching experience being able to be in a diversified community of learners and scholars, which I think helped my development. Not only the people in the community where we grew up who were always teaching you, but also the university, or what William Holmes Borders calls the University of Adversity.
Okay.
Where everyday folk would teach you.
Right.
And they would, and some of them were lettered and some of them had formal education, but everybody gave you some schooling and some learning.
Right.
And I appreciate being a part of a community where everyone had value. Even the winos on the corner of Pacific and Ironwood that we would pass by
That's
at that
right.
store would always speak words of life and encouragement to you.
That's right.
So I was thankful for that kind of a mix of everyday folk that could share information with you and help you along the way to get better. And then being able to go to get more formal education at the university, which I value as well. So I'm thankful for that, those two types of teachers, if you will, or people in the environment. Because at that time they were always nurturing, asking questions. You still in school? How you doing?
Right.
Those kinds of questions. And I think that was part of the formative development of us as we grew up to respect people of different levels. And like you said, the community, everybody lived there together.
That's right.
The custodians lived next door to the physicians.
That's right.
The everyday factory folk lived. It wasn't a highly stratified community. Folks just lived there together, and they worked together, and it was just beautiful. It was a beautiful time. It really was.
Yes. And you're quite the author too, Pastor Stewart. You how many books have you written? About 12, 14?
13 books, and some in incubation. We're moving more now to more of a creative writing kind of thing. But yeah, about 13 books total.
So where could some of our listeners get a hold? I know you gave me all your books. I still got them, and I appreciate them. Where could most of your books that you've written thus far have to do with church and the Christian community? Yeah. Where could someone go to pick those books up?
Amazon.
And give us a couple titles.
Yeah, by Amazon. One popular book is Soul Survivors and African American Spirituality. All those books are pretty much available at Amazon.
Okay.
And so you can get them there. That's been a book that's been doing quite well recently, too, in terms of giving an overview of the Black experience in terms of church and spirituality and how the church, or our practice of religion in the context of America, not only opened up a new understanding of life and God, but also helped to create culture. That we have always functioned, our spirituality as a people has always been not only learning more about God and being empowering by what we learn through the Word of God, but also taking that experience and creating culture, creating music, creating different elements of culture that have helped us to assimilate into the larger culture, but also to create our own subculture.
Right.
Blues, spirituals, all of the musical forms that we have that are part of our culture have some touch point in terms of African American spirituality. That's the primary thesis of the book, that it's not just religion and text, but it's also context, the world we live in, and how we were able to develop our own signature style in terms of music and culture, and which has been part of our sanity and also part of our gift to America.
Right.
As a spiritual people, as a religious people, bringing some of those remnants over from Africa, but also creating our own unique African American paradigm.
Right.
Where we have a culture, a way of seeing and living and expressing ourselves in the context of the American experience, which has helped America to be better, but also helped us to find sanity and wholeness and light, and also continuity within the historical framework in which we find ourselves. And so that's been a